From the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia, this is CampusLore Live, presented by Geico. I'm your host, Drew Butler, joined as always by my co-host, Aaron Murray, and very special guest this week, Desmond Trufant. Desmond is a defensive back for the Atlanta Falcons. He's in his 6th season. He was a first-round draft pick in 2013 and a Pro Bowler in 2015 from the University of Washington. Desmond, thanks so much for being here, man. You're from Tacoma, Washington. That's pretty much exactly opposite of where we are right now. Cool fact about you, though, both of your brothers played in the NFL also. Was it a foregone conclusion that you were going to play in the NFL too?
I mean, that's what I was telling myself, watching my brothers do their thing for so long, it was only right that, I followed and, I just wanted to do it and try to do it better, So I was definitely blessed to have them, as a role model for me.
Absolutely. Aaron, I know you and I both had mentors and guys that we could bounce ideas off, not only while we were in college, but in the NFL as well. How have your brothers helped you up to this point, going into your 6th year or now in your 6th year with the Falcon and finding a lot of success?
I just kind of been around the NFL a long time, My oldest brother played 10 years, and Isaiah, he played 5 years. So, I was able to, just kind of live through them, and they just told me what to expect, coming into the league, the business side of it, things like that, how to market myself, how to brand myself in the community, things like that. So they just taught me a lot,
How's Atlanta? How have you been enjoying Atlanta thus far?
Atlanta's cool, man. It's far from home from me, but it's dope. I'm blessed to be here. They treat me right down here. Had a lot of success down here, so I love the city. There's a lot of places to eat, so I love that. I love the Waffle House. I'm always there. So yeah, Atlanta's dope.
Absolutely. Aaron, Desmond obviously has a bunch of guys that he can bounce ideas off of in the family. Tell me something that you learned while making that transition from college into the NFL.
Well, I think you talk about role models and whether it's brother or dad, and I had the same thing for me. My brother played professional baseball. My dad played professional baseball. So why it's not football, it's still you're learning how to handle yourself as a man, both on and off the field, whether it's baseball or football. But, great mentors. You know it at Georgia with Bobo and Rick, guys who had success in college, not only as players but as coaches. So bouncing ideas off them, and then I would hit up Stafford too. I'd hit up Stafford. I would hit up David Green, Shockley, guys who had a lot of success at the University of Georgia playing quarterback, but then also in the NFL as well. We're seeing Stafford right now and what he's done at Detroit. So there's no shortage of connections when you go to a school like Georgia or a school like Washington to bounce ideas off, ask questions, and all those veteran guys, they want to help out. They want to see that new young crop of talent from their university make that transition smoothly into the NFL.
Yeah, your brother, you mentioned he played professional baseball, so obviously you could ask him for advice being a professional athlete. Now, your brother, Marcus, he was a professional football player, but in college, he played for Washington State. Washington and Washington State, that is one of the bigger rivalries in college football. Is there anything that he would keep away from you during Apple Cup week?
Not really. It was all love. Obviously, we would talk our trash, talk our mess, but it was all love,
Absolutely. That's going to be a big game this year, Aaron, for sure. Washington technically still controls their own destiny in the Pac-12 North. Washington State going to be competing for the Pac-12 North. Any gambling, any brotherly gambling that's going to be going on that week?
The thing about the Apple Cup is you never know. No matter what's going on, who's winning at the time, who's ranked higher, all that. The Apple Cup is it's in its own little world, so I'm excited to see what happens.
Now, being from Tacoma, and obviously Marcus just mentioned, went to Washington State. You went to Washington. That is one of the more unique environments on game day in the country. What really made you gravitate towards Washington?
Well, I didn't want to go too far from home. I was far away enough, to where I was on my own, but if I needed to go home and do something, that's why I wanted to go there. And like you said, the environment there is great. The fans, they're crazy. The school's great, got a great education there. But I just love playing in Husky Stadium, man. It was dope. It gave me just that exhilarating feeling, you know, running out on the field and hearing them fans go crazy.
Absolutely. Cool fact, your head coach at Washington was Steve Sarkisian, who's now the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, so you're back with him. What's that relationship been like over the years?
Yeah, Sark, I was actually Sark's first recruit. Sark came to my house, had dinner with me and my parents and stuff, so he's dope. I'm glad he's back in Atlanta doing his thing, having success. And, you know, we talk about old times and stuff like that, but it's cool just how everything just comes full circle in football, you know.
It's awesome. As a Pac-12 alumni, Aaron, you know, being on the Southeast, when an SEC game comes on, you wake up at 9 a.m. on a Saturday, you're ready to rock and roll at noon, then 3:30, then 7:30. Desmond, you wake up, you got to wait till like 10 p.m. to get some action on the East Coast. Do you just watch all the other games on and then get ready for Pac-12 after dark?
I record a lot of games, you know, but sometimes I stay up late if I'm up, you know, but it is what it is. You know, we be doing our thing, so it'd be worth the wait, you know.
Absolutely. Aaron, you traveled out west and played against Colorado. I was there when Georgia played against Arizona State and Colorado. It's fun to go out west, man. The fans are great, the football's unique, and the environments are really awesome.
Well, I think the biggest thing is the time difference, because I not only played out there a couple times, but most of my games I'm covering right now for CBS are Mountain West games. So, you know, first off, I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning because the time change, and then games start at 9 o'clock in the morning. So you're literally waking up to football. So my games at, you know, 8 o'clock kickoff, 9 o'clock kickoff, I literally get to watch like 10 games before my game actually starts, which is fun because I get to see a lot of action. But it's good and bad because all the Heisman voters, the people looking at the bowl games, it's tough for them if they're on the East Coast watching a game that comes on at 10:30 at night. You're not going to bed till 1. So that hinders you a little bit. But like you said, Drew, it's definitely a different environment out there. The fans, the traditions. It's exciting to see all that good stuff.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I lived in Arizona for 4 years when I was playing with the Cardinals. Waking up at 9 a.m. and getting college football immediately,
awesome.
Riding it all the way throughout the day, that is awesome. But you mentioned the Heisman voting, and Gardner Minshew, the quarterback at Washington State, certainly getting a lot of notoriety right now. You may believe that he is a legitimate Heisman candidate. And that's going to bring us to our Believe It segment. This is Believe It, where we state what we believe to be true in college football. Believe It is presented by Geico. You won't believe how easy it is to switch and save hundreds on car insurance with Geico. Believe it. All right, I just set you up. Do you believe Gardner Minshew is going to win the Heisman Trophy?
I do not believe Gardner Minshew is going to win the Heisman. I think they win out. He should be in New York based on what his stats are, and obviously getting Washington State maybe into the college football playoffs if they go and win the Pac-12. But I do believe, talk about Heisman guys, I do believe that this week Tua Tagovailoa will play an entire 4 quarters. We will finally get to see what he can do, not for a half, not for 3 quarters, but for all 4 quarters, because this LSU defense, they are legit, they're for real, they're tenacious, and they're playing at home at night. I think it's going to be a fun game, but most importantly, I think he's actually going to play 4 quarters.
Yeah, Tua has yet to play in 4 quarters in his entire career, and actually you can bet on that this week, Aaron. That is a fact. You can bet on if you think Tua Tagovailoa, Alabama's quarterback, will play in the 4th quarter. Crazy times for the #1 team in the nation. Desmond, what do you believe to be true in college football right now?
I believe somebody from the Pac-12 gets, you know, to the college football playoffs. So we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. A lot of important games in the Pac-12, especially the Pac-12 North as the season continues to go on. And what do I believe right now?
You believe Notre Dame is going to make it into the playoffs? I know you do, Drew.
Well, that's certainly interesting. But what I believe in college football, and I'm going to give you a pick this week and next week also. I believe it when I tell you that Kentucky's not beating Georgia this week.
Let's just stay in the Kentucky train.
Absolutely no way Kentucky will beat Georgia this week. And
Big fan of Kentucky.
I got a lot of blowback last week for not giving you enough stats. So here you go, Kentucky fans. Kentucky did not cross the 50-yard line on offense against Texas A&M. They only scored 14 points, and they lost. They beat Vanderbilt, one of the worst teams in the SEC, 14-7. That's Vanderbilt. You beat Missouri last week, 15-14, with one of the worst calls I've ever seen to end a game that gave you an untimed down and a chance to win the football game. Kentucky's not beating Georgia. There's no way. Georgia's better on defense, they're better on offense, and most importantly, they're better on special teams. So I know Kroger Field's tough to play in. Georgia's going to win that game, and guess what? Kentucky's losing to Tennessee next week as well. I know you're a basketball school. I told you that. Tennessee might beat you in basketball this year too. Tennessee's going to beat you in basketball again, just like they did last year.
In the state
so
after
believe
show.
it when I tell you Kentucky's losing to Georgia and Tennessee. Basketball's right around the corner. All right, let's get to week 9. That's out of the way.
Did you get out of your system?
Yeah, but it's the truth. I told you that. It is the truth. Let's get to week 9. Week 9 was crazy. The craziness continues in college football. 11 ranked teams lost last week. 8 of them to unranked teams. I mean, 8 losses to unranked teams is the most in the top 25 era for 1 week of football. What's going on, man?
Conferences are just getting more competitive. I think it starts in the high school ranks. High school football players are getting better. You're seeing more and more high schools, whether it's going to the spread offense, more pro style, whatever it is, and they're getting more development at a younger age. So even if you're not a top recruit, you're still pretty good. And you've had some good coaching, you've been to some good camps. So I think even though the smaller schools are getting really good recruits at a young age, getting them in there, developing them. So that's kind of why you're seeing the gap really start to close between a really, really good elite football team and then the kind of the smaller schools. So you see that. I think my biggest surprise, though, and it wasn't a surprise they lost, has just been FSU this entire season.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest home loss they've ever had, I think, in the history of their program.
Yep.
They played well the first quarter. It was 0-0, and then Clemson went on a roll, ended up scoring 28 points in the second quarter, and then I believe it was 59-10, and just dismantled them offensively, defensively. And Florida State, it's the offensive line, really. You look at that offensive line, you think, why can't Florida State recruit big guys? I mean, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago, they won a national championship. Not an ACC championship, but a national championship. And then now, 5 years later, they can't pass protect, they can't run protect. And they look like, middle of the pack ACC squad. So I don't know where they are going forward. I think that's my biggest surprise this season. Not that they're not good, but that they're just not competitive in these bigger games.
Absolutely. I mean, unranked teams, you got to get juiced up when you're playing a top 25 team, Desmond. You know that. That's true in college, and it's true in the NFL as well. Why do you think these ranked teams are falling to unranked teams? Is it lack of focus? Is it lack of preparation? What does it have to do with?
Well, I agree with you, how you said, just more high school athletes are training more. So, like you said, that evens out everything. And, I wasn't a top recruit. I was only a 3-star, so I feel like, a lot of that, that puts chips on, that puts chips on your shoulder, that put a chip on my shoulder. I wasn't invited to a lot of places I thought I should have been. So, when guys play these higher ranked teams, they got something to prove, And, the coaches getting better, scheme is getting better. So, and you never know. I feel like college, anybody can beat anybody at some point. If you get that momentum, that's kind of how I feel. So.
Absolutely. Development and discipline seems to be huge for some of these unranked teams, but it is kind of crazy how college football works. In the NFL, for example, the worst team gets to pick first in the draft the next year. That's how they try to create that parity. In college football, the best teams get the best players. But guys like Desmond, who is a 3-star, goes to Washington, and now he's a Pro Bowler. So that's certainly one way to look at it.
The NFL draft doesn't help the Browns too much, though.
No, it's
they've had first picks for a long time.
It has not been helping out.
I don't know where that parity is. So
the Cleveland Browns. Well, the college football playoff rankings, the first rendition is this week, and it seems like the top 3 teams are pretty unanimous. It's going to be Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, 1, 2, 3. Who's the 4th team? I mean, you got LSU, you got Michigan, Georgia, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Who you going with in the 4th spot?
I think you got to go with LSU. I mean, they've had the most impressive resume when it comes to wins. I mean, Miami, Mississippi State, Georgia. I mean, they've beat some really talented teams. So I think you got to go with LSU right now. They by far the most impressive. Obviously, the blemish versus Florida, but it was at Gainesville, so you got to give them some credit for that loss right there. But we're going to learn a lot this weekend. I mean, they're good chance they lose this football game to Alabama, and then now they're kicked out. So for me, I'm really looking at 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
And for me right now, I really like Oklahoma. I know they had the loss to Texas, a tough one, but overall, Kyler Murray, that team, right, offensively, defensively, hopefully they get a little bit better. I like Oklahoma as being that next team to possibly step in there and take over if LSU does lose this weekend to Alabama.
Michigan's got the #1 ranked total defense in America. I mean, if they can keep that going, knock off Ohio State, win the Big Ten for a first time in a long time, you think they could sneak in at the 4th spot?
Yeah, defense wins championships, I feel like, at the end of the day, so they definitely got a chance, create them turnovers, put that pressure on, anything can happen.
Absolutely. It'll be really interesting to see how Coach Harbaugh gets those guys to play. They got a big game against Penn State this weekend. We'll touch on that later on in the show. Big news today, DJ Durkin, Maryland's formerly suspended head coach, was reinstated today. This, of course, is in the wake of the tragic news from the offseason when an offensive lineman died during conditioning, and that is tragic. DJ Durkin was placed on administrative leave. The board met, and they concluded today that he will become and be reinstated as the Maryland head coach. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Hey, people say it wasn't under him. It was during conditioning. It wasn't during practice. Still, as a head coach, I mean, you're responsible for everything that goes on in the building. I mean, you're responsible for what goes on in academics, making sure the players get their grades, that they're eligible to play. You're responsible for your assistant coaches. You're responsible for tutors, for trainers. I mean, you are in charge. You dictate what happens in that building. You let the training staff treat the players like that. And you talk about a toxic environment where kids were scared to talk up, kids were scared to vocalize, say, hey, I'm hurt or I'm in a lot of pain or discomfort or whatever it may be. They were too intimidated, and that starts from the head coach, and it trickles down to, like I said, the trainers, to mentors, whoever it may be, that environment that he created there at Maryland. So he is involved, whether he wasn't there that day and it was just a training staff. It's his leadership, his control, his decisions really create, like I said, that toxic environment. So I don't think this was the right decision. And it's not like we're talking about a very successful head coach anyways. I mean, the guy was, 10 and 15 in the first place, intimidated kids, which is not the way to do it nowadays. And I don't know, I think obviously they met, they felt it was the best decision, but looking at it from my angle and from a lot of people's angle, I think most people would disagree with it.
Yeah, in a few weeks, Maryland's going to be playing Ohio State. So Durkin matches up against Urban Meyer, two suspended head coaches, now both reinstated. Now, when they announced DJ Durkin was still going to be the head coach, Desmond, 3 players actually walked out of the team meeting. I mean, it's not all football at Maryland right now, and for good reason. Did you have any experience like that in college where the coaches and the players weren't on the same page, or is that just really unusual at any level of football?
Well, I think when it comes to injuries and stuff like that in college, I think, just in general, being injured in football or saying you're injured is mentally burning our brains as a sign of weakness. You're supposed to fight through, you're supposed to push through, you're supposed to go till you getting carried off the field, So that kind of, has to change because you got to take care of your body from the player's standpoint. You only got one body, you got one life, and yeah, we love the game, but at the same time, you got a long life ahead of you. But I can't speak for other environments, but I know my environment was good. We was able to talk to the coaches. I mean, obviously, as a young kid going from high school to college, you're gonna get talked to differently. Like you're pretty much. It's a job now. Like
sure.
there's the coaches are getting paid, and they have things on the line as well too. So it's different. You got to be mentally strong enough to withstand what it is. And sometimes things happen. That's just what football is. But you got to be strong enough to get through. And if you do, you'll benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was a tragic situation, Aaron. And you mentioned DJ Durkin is in charge of the entire program. He is the CEO of Maryland football. From a legal perspective, though, I think he might have gotten away with this because he was not proven guilty for the situation. The toxic environment, though, that's real. And this was an emergency. And we mentioned it when it first happened. I mean, I felt like if I was there, and this is much easier said than done, you feel like you'd be looking out for one of your brothers and saying, hey, man, you don't look right. Don't worry about it. Everybody can say what they want about you, but don't put your toe on that line. Let's get you inside of the training staff. To your point, though, training staff said, get back out there. Not a good look.
No, it's not a good look at all for anyone involved in the situation, but it's tough. I mean, you want to stand up for your brother, but then when a coach is yelling at you, get your butt back on the line.
Yeah.
He's fine, leave him alone, and I'm sure there's a lot of more profanities that went along with that. You are intimidated. I mean, these are 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. I mean, they are still kids. And you're talking about 45, 50 to 60-year-old men who are supposed to know everything, getting paid a lot of money, and are supposed to have your best interests at hand. And it's proven, and this isn't the first time that's happened, that it's not always like that.
Yeah.
They are, like you said, they're getting paid lots of money, and they're worried about their butts too, and they're willing to push you to sometimes too far as a player. And it's tough. It's tough being 19-year-old and want to talk up to a grown man who's getting paid a lot of money.
Absolutely. Sad situation at Maryland, but DJ Durkin is in fact reinstated as head coach. Looking back on what happened last week, Georgia and Florida was the biggest game of the week, a matchup of two top 10 SEC teams. Aaron, you were there. You got inducted into the Georgia-Florida Hall of Fame, and you watched Georgia roll to victory 36-17. Georgia finally looked like what they had last year.
Yeah, they looked tremendous. Offensively, things were clicking in the run game. I think the biggest thing, which I wanted to see early in the game, was what's the plan with Jake Fromm?
Yeah.
Were they going to keep him in for three plays or three series and then all of a sudden put Fields in there, or were they going to put Justin Fields in there for maybe third downs or red zones? I think they made a decision the off week, and then heading up to that game is Jake Fromm is our quarterback going forward. No matter what the situation is, he is our leader, and I think you saw Jake Fromm who was relaxed, he was comfortable, he was confident, he knew the game plan, and he executed to perfection. I mean, 3 touchdowns, those passes were absolutely gorgeous. That team looked very confident, and they looked well prepared. So sometimes you just need a butt whooping. Sometimes you need a little wake me up, which they got versus LSU, and hopefully they can continue that the rest of the season.
Desmond, C.J. Henderson, Florida's best defensive back, went down in the first quarter, and his backup got absolutely exploited for the rest of the game. You probably see that a lot in the NFL, man. If somebody comes off the bench, you're going right at him right off the bat.
Yeah, definitely. They're coming at us anyway.
Yeah.
You know, as a DB, they're gonna test you at some point in the game. And if a corner gets hurt, that's highlighted immediately, and I know they're gonna attack you. That's just the game, So, but you got to be ready. You just gotta stay loose on the sideline, because you never know when you're gonna get called in, and you got to take advantage of the moment, because that could be your moment to shine.
One coach told me, I think it was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's funny because in high school football, you play the game, then you come in on Monday morning, review the game tape, try to fix it for the next Friday. In college football, you go in at halftime, you adjust, and you go out and play the second half. In the NFL, it's the next play. If you do something wrong one play, they're coming right back at you. So Georgia kind of took that with C.J. Henderson going down and continued to exploit Florida. They finally put together a full game, and they won 36-17. Looking at Florida, though, it was a big loss for them. It really was. And another team who was in the top 10, Texas, they lost also to an unranked Oklahoma State team. Which one was the worst loss? Was it Florida or was it Texas?
That's hard. Florida been looking good. My teammate Brian Poole, he went there. I'm always watching the games with him the night before the game and stuff. We catching it. But yeah, that was a tough loss.
Absolutely.
I think Texas. I think Florida. You look at them right now under Dan Mullen first season. I think they're way ahead of expectations at the moment. To be 6-1 heading into the game, to be in LSU, have a lot of momentum, to even be considered to be competitive in this game.
Yeah, for sure.
You look at this game in the summertime, as a Georgia fan or anyone in the country, you say, okay, that's going to be a blowout based on what Florida looked like last season and what Georgia looked like last season. That game won't be competitive. Then all of a sudden you're going the week of and saying Florida legitimately has a chance to win this football game. So still props to Florida. Like I said, way ahead of schedule right now. I think Texas, a little bit more disappointing based on what they've done so far this season. Obviously, the big win versus Oklahoma. So I think this sets them back a little bit, but still I think both teams, where they are at with their coaching staff and with their program, I think still are way far ahead for getting back to the Floridas and Texas football programs that we know and love.
Yeah, for sure. Texas can get back on track quickly. They got West Virginia, a top 15 team, coming in to Austin this week. Certainly, though, the fan bases have to feel decent. Some other fan bases across the nation, though, have to be feeling pretty miserable, most notably Florida State. You mentioned it in the show open. Auburn, this was a team that was considered a contender for the college football playoff preseason. They've got 3 conference losses and 3 very tough games to finish up the season. And Desmond, USC, out in Southern California, they're 4-4, and Clay Helton might be on the hot seat as head coach out there.
Yeah, USC, every time we played there, it was wild. They was always legit. But, sometimes it happens, hopefully they can, bounce back, get their rhythm back. But, college it's a tough game. It's a cold game. So you got to be on it.
Well, let's not forget, too, they're starting a true freshman quarterback who's supposed to be a senior in high school right now. So I think he has a little bit of slack saying, hey, we're building this program. We have a young quarterback who's going to be here for the next 2 or 3 seasons. So I think they're going to give him another year to kind of see the feel of the development of their quarterback. And then from there, you can make a decision, I think.
Absolutely. I think one coach that's really getting a pass and a fan base that can't be happy, but it's understandable based from a roster perspective, is Nebraska. I mean, Scott Frost, he's only got 2 wins, one being to Bethune-Cookman, and that's the most losses they've had up to this point in the season.
I don't know how talented the roster is there at Nebraska. I mean, they were rebuilding a lot. We talk about all the time. Their quarterback was hurt for the majority of the season. You know, they were playing with a walk-on freshman quarterback for 4 or 5 games. So really set them behind momentum-wise, confidence-wise within that new system. So I think he'll be fine.
All right. Speaking of the contenders, obviously there's some fan bases that are feeling pretty miserable. Some are feeling very optimistic. Desmond, your brother Marcus has got to be happy. Washington State, Gardner Minshew, their quarterback, is on fire. Last week he was 40 of 50 for 438 yards and 3 touchdowns at Stanford. If Washington State can keep this going, they might be able to find themselves in the college football playoff.
Yeah, they look good. Like I said earlier, once you catch a rhythm, you know, especially at the right time, you know, that's really what's important, you know, and it's crunch time right now. So, you know, they look good, so we'll see.
How do you approach it as a defensive back when you're watching the tape on a guy like Gardner Minshew running Mike Leach's offense where it's spread them out, very creative routes? What do you do as a DB to try to make sure that you keep everything in front of you?
Well, I played really aggressive in college. We played a lot of press man, played some off as well too, but I was just aggressive, man. I knew they were gonna come at me because I know they didn't like me over there at all. You know, anytime I played out there, they was coming at me, the fans, the team, you know, so I loved it. I embraced the challenge. But like you said, you got to keep everything in front because they thrive off the big plays, you know, so that's just kind of how I approached it.
Aaron, you're no stranger to big plays. How would you like to be the quarterback at Washington State right now?
You know, at first
you'd have to shave off the
goat.
No,
but first off, I'd grow the mustache. I mean, the distraction for the defense is making sure they don't get mesmerized by that beautiful mustache that Gardner Minshew has. It's a fun offense, and I got to cover my first week of this season. And you see it, teams talk about using the whole field. They use the whole field, and they don't call a run play. I mean, everything is a pass to the quarterback unless he sees a light box, and he'll check it to a run play. I love it. And then you look at James Williams, our running back, and he is not only having a really good year running the football, but I believe he has right around 48 catches. So you're worried about all these receivers and the routes and the concepts and spreading you from sideline to sideline. And then all of a sudden you get a running back who's very talented out of the backfield, matched up one-on-one with a linebacker. As a quarterback, you take that any day. If I get an athletic guy against a slow slug of a linebacker, that's an easy matchup, and boom, boom, boom. And that's why you're seeing this offense have so much success. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah.
It is a lot of fun to see them in action. It's almost like basketball on grass.
Yeah, it really is. And this is a great story. I mean, Mike Leach is a very eclectic guy, fun guy to follow. And Gardner Minshew, a graduate transfer from East Carolina, he was committed to Alabama. And Mike Leach called him and said, do you want to sit on the bench at Alabama or be the nation's top passer at Washington State? And so far, he's living up to his word. I know, he really may be in New York. And I'd love to see Mike Leach in New York too, just to talk to the cameras and answer all his questions. That would be great. Speaking of contenders or pretenders, the Kentucky Wildcats. We got to get to the bottom of this because obviously—
You said your piece.
I've said my piece, but I want to ask Desmond about the pass interference call last week. It was the last play of the game. They were in goal line situation. The defensive back's sitting there on the goal line like you're supposed to, not going to give up any ground. And the Kentucky wide receiver runs smack into him, initiates contact. They're both kind of wrestling. The quarterback, Terry Wilson, throws the ball so far out of bounds.
It was uncatchable.
It was uncatchable, but the guy caught it, and he was well out of bounds. So there's no hypothetical argument there. I can't believe the referee actually stuck with the call, didn't wave it off, and said no call. I mean, it was a game-changing call. It gave Kentucky an untimed down. Did the defensive back play it perfectly in that situation?
Well, you know, I'm real biased with this question.
Oh, that's why I came to you first.
I'm gonna be real biased, you know. But I mean, from what I'm told is you can stand your ground. If a guy runs into you and you're just standing there, you can put your hands up, you know, and defend yourself. You can't just— I'm not just gonna let somebody run me over, you know. And usually referees in that situation in the end zone, they kind of call it a little lighter because, you know, it happens so quick. You know, the receiver usually has his hands on the defender and vice versa, you know, so they typically don't call it as tight, you know. And that was a game-winning or game-changing play call. So, I mean, you know, sometimes as a DB, you just got to chalk it up sometimes, you know, because it's not, more than likely, it's not going to go your way. But,
Well, I think
the SEC owes Missouri football an apology. I'm sorry, that was a horrible call. And Aaron, I want to ask you this, okay? Everybody's talking about Kentucky. Yes, their defense is
good.
legit.
Yes,
Josh
very
Allen
good.
is a premier pass rusher in college football, but Benny Snell's been getting a lot of attention, rightfully so. He only had 60 yards against A&M. He had 67 yards last week against Missouri. He got so frustrated, he was yelling at guys on the sideline, got pulled out of the game. I mean, this is not a powerhouse on offense. They've scored 14 points, and 15 points against not exactly premier defenses. This week is a huge challenge for them.
We talk about finding ways to win football games. I mean, whether it's offensively, defensively, special teams, you saw last week at the punt return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Somehow they're finding ways to win games. The 2-minute drive at the end of the game, Terry Wilson's having an awful first 3 quarters, awful 3.5 quarters.
Yeah.
Can't hit anything. I mean, he's a kid on a boat, can't even hit the water. All of a sudden, a 2-minute drive, he leads the team down there, obviously gets a little bit lucky with the pass interference, but he still drives them down there and gets a touchdown to win that football game. They're finding ways to win, but most importantly, it's the defense, because the defense is giving them an opportunity by keeping it close, low scoring, where the offense is not saying, hey man, we got to score 21 points, we got to score 28 points to come back. It's small deficits, which is fine for an offense to kind of make that late rally. So I think this could be a fun football game. I think their defense, you said it with Allen on the outside, a lot of talented DBs as well, long, lanky type players, one of the best stopping the run in the SEC. If they can keep Georgia's run game to maybe under 100 yards, 120 yards, once again, put the ball in Fromm's hands, make Fromm win this football game. I think they can make it somewhat competitive. I agree with you, though. I think Georgia is a better overall team, but there's something to say. Like I said at the beginning of this, there's something to say about a team that just finds a way to win football games.
No, you're definitely right. And their hallmark win in 2018, beating Florida in week 2, much different Florida team that's fielded right now. One more contender, pretender, Penn State. We can touch on this quickly. They're going to Michigan this week. Michigan, we mentioned it earlier, Desmond, #1 ranked total defense in America. I don't know. Penn State's just been a little too inconsistent for me. Are you buying the Nittany Lions?
I mean, we'll see. They got some players. They look legit, but I mean, like I said earlier, I feel like defense, you know, can get you out of a lot of situations, you know. So, you know, we'll just see who comes with it. But you know, I'm a defensive guy. You know, I love defense. So
as a defensive guy, you go up against some very explosive offenses in the Pac-12, and now especially in the NFL. What's it like getting ready to play in Oregon, a USC, or even now a team like the Saints?
Well, back then, Oregon.
Stanford as well. Andrew Luck.
Yeah,
Doug
Oregon
Baldwin.
had Chip Kelly back then, so it was the real high-paced offense. They had DeAnthony Thomas, a lot of explosive guys, you know. So I never beat Oregon. I mean, they kind of, I feel like they whooped us every time we played them. You know, that's just a high-powered team. You got to keep them in front. Stanford, they were a physical team. They would get into, like, you know, big personnels, have a lot of tight ends they would throw to, and things like that. The Saints, you know, they're a high-power offense. They got a magician. Drew Brees is so precise in what he does. It's like clockwork, you know, so you just really got to be on your keys because he'll expose you. So, I mean, like, the college game and the NFL game, these coaches are getting so developed in how they're calling it, you know, so you just got to prepare. You got to watch film, you got to study, you got to put your work in and practice, make sure you're on your details, study yourself, how you think you're going to get attacked as well, too.
Absolutely. Well, let's look forward to Week 10. Huge slate of games this week. We mentioned the college football playoff rankings are out this week, and there will be a hallmark game at 8 p.m. on Saturday night. #1 Alabama traveling to Baton Rouge to take on the #4 ranked LSU Tigers. LSU is a 14.5-point home underdog. I mean, I can't even wrap my head around that. A top 5 team is a 14.5-point home underdog. Is that line too high, or is there no way you can't even put it higher?
It's definitely not. People have asked me, is this a 20-point kind of game?
Yeah.
I think it's around at 10 points. I think it may be a little bit too high. You got to think 8 o'clock, that place is going to be nuts. I mean, you've played in some crazy environments. We played in some crazy environments. That place is going to be electric. I mean,
Absolutely.
most likely are going to take off work maybe today,
Yeah,
Wednesday,
just start
Tuesday, Wednesday.
tailgating.
People are off work, they're tailgating, they're getting ready for 8 o'clock on Saturday night. You got to look at this game and LSU's defense, the environment. I think the key is, though, is get a couple first downs. Force Alabama, this high-powered offense, force them to drive 80-plus yards every single time. Because if you go 3 and out and Alabama only has 50, 60 yards to go down there and score a touchdown, I think that's too easy for them. You got to make it long, and you got to make it loud and make it difficult. Win the field position battle, and then win the time of possession. I think that's the only way that you can somehow muster a win. Because if you're getting 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out, one, that kills field position, and two, that just kills the fans.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't get the fans to be loud that entire game, that is a huge advantage for that LSU team, especially on the defensive side of the football. That's how you can maybe get that upset and keep this a close game in the fourth quarter.
The biggest question of the week is, how does LSU win? Is it stop Tua Tagovailoa? I'm with you. I'm on the defensive side here. I think it's about Joe Burrow, LSU's quarterback, keeping LSU's offense on the field. Like you said, get first downs. Make Alabama's defense stay on the field. Hopefully keep the starters in around the fourth quarter. How do you think LSU's going to approach the game?
I think, time of possession will be big. Like you said, the environment, getting that going, because I played there. It's really loud there when they're rolling, So that's big. And turnovers, I feel like that's the biggest key in football. The biggest stat. If you get turnovers, that kills all the momentum, gives you all the momentum, and changes the game. So I'm excited to see it.
Here's a question for you.
Tua doesn't throw interceptions.
Yeah.
That's the issue. I mean, there's two things. I mean, does Tua play 4 quarters?
Yeah.
And does Tua finally throw an interception? Because I think he's only thrown 2 in his career at Alabama. Both those were last season. He's, 24, 25 touchdowns this year, no interceptions, hasn't played a fourth quarter. So we may see a lot of firsts from Tua.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
Is he a 4-quarter quarterback? I mean, he is, but we haven't seen it, so this should be fun.
Speaking of firsts, is this his first true road game? I mean, I know he played in Neyland Stadium, but nobody believed Tennessee would even be competitive. Not the coaches, not the fans, not the players. It was 21-0 at the end of the first quarter, and fans were leaving. This is a real road game, and I'm afraid it's the first one for Tua Tagovailoa.
Well, I think another key, too, is just make it close in the first quarter. I mean,
Yes.
Alabama's so used to right now. You look up, I mean, you turn the TV on, you go get a drink, you come back, and all of a sudden it's 14, 21-0.
It's crazy.
In the first 4 minutes of the game, can you somehow make this a 7-0 or 7-3 game at the end of the first? Then all of a sudden Alabama, I think, gets a little uncomfortable. Like, we're not used to a close ball game. We're used to the game being over after 15 minutes. We're in a dogfight. And I think that's a little different mentality of having to click that switch saying, all right, let's get ready to rock and roll for 4 quarters.
All right, Desmond, who's your pick? Who's winning this game? Huge game, Alabama at LSU.
I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with them.
Love it.
I love the
Making
underdogs.
a statement. I love
the
that.
underdogs.
All right, Aaron, who you got?
No chance. Alabama's, there's just too dynamic all over the place. I think it hurts too. LSU's going to be missing their star linebacker for the first half. I think that hurts that team.
Again, just a joke from the official.
Yeah, that's another joke call. So Alabama's too good, but I do think this will be a test for Alabama, which I think they need, honestly. I think they really need to play all 4 quarters and be tested.
I think LSU's making this game to be too much, right? Everybody's talking about how the atmosphere is going to be one of the best college football teams in history coming into Baton Rouge. I just don't know if they're ready yet. I mean, LSU has had a fantastic season up to this point, but I'm with you, Aaron. This isn't going to be close. Alabama's going to win, probably by 21 points or more.
You think
21? I
21?
really do think so.
Wow.
I really do think so. So we'll check back next Tuesday and see who's right. A big game inside the Big 12 is number 12 West Virginia going to number 15 Texas. This was set up to be huge, but a couple of slip-ups from both teams, and now they're just jockeying for position, hopefully, to stay atop the Big 12.
I like Texas. I think they've played well this season. Obviously, it hurts losing that game to Oklahoma State, but Texas at home, I think the fan base is really buying in to this program and the direction they're heading. So I think the atmosphere is going to be exciting. Like I said, I do think they're playing better both offensively and defensively. Sam Ehlinger should be – he played last week, but now even more healthy heading into this game. And Will Grier, my boy that started the season off, played well, but has been a little bit prone to interceptions. So later in the season right now. So I like Texas. I think they're a better overall team, offense, defense, And obviously at home, I think is a big advantage as well.
Texas has their backs up against the wall, Desmond, and they lost last week to Oklahoma State. Crazy finish in that game. Do you think they can bounce back and have a good game against West Virginia?
Yeah, I do, especially after a loss, that just gives you that extra motivation, and it's that time of year, you need these types of wins, you need big wins, so. And I know the coaching staff and the players, everybody's locked in. So I'm excited to see what they do.
Awesome. I like Will Greer here. I think this is a statement game for him. I mean, this can really propel him into the fourth quarter of this season, if you will. So look for West Virginia and Dana Holgorsen to really dial something up special in Austin. In the Big Ten, there's another huge top 15 matchup. Number 14, Penn State is going to number 5, Michigan. I thought this was kind of crazy. Michigan's a 10-point favorite here. And Penn State had a big win last week against Iowa, one of the hotter teams in the nation. Crazy point, though, Harbaugh has not really had a lot of success against the better teams in the Big Ten.
Oh, he hasn't. But I like Michigan this game. Not offensive. I think Shea Patterson in offense is playing tremendous right now. But defensively, they're giving up 14 points a game right now.
Yeah.
Penn State's identity with Trace McSorley, it's been good one game, bad another game, good. I just don't think the offense is diverse enough. And then defensively, one of the worst defenses in that conference stopping the run. And Michigan's been on fire, got a great running back. Shea Patterson, his ability to use his legs as well in the run game. So I like Michigan at home, but like I said, it starts with the defense. That defense has really been on fire this entire season.
Absolutely. Aaron's been really kind of campaigning for me to come over to the Michigan side.
He'll come over one day.
I'm starting to get there.
Michigan and Notre Dame.
I'm starting to get there. Michigan has the number 1 ranked total defense in America, and Aaron just said they can run the ball efficiently as well. As a number 1 ranked total defense going against an inconsistent offense led by Trace McSorley, do you think Michigan rolls here?
Yeah, like I said, I love defense, and I like how they play. They rush the passer, get turnovers, put the pressure on. So, yeah, I like what they're going to do.
All right, clean sweep here. Aaron, I'm on the Michigan bandwagon.
About time.
I'm here to stay.
If I can only get you at Notre Dame, then we'll be
Michigan will have a big
Finally
weekend, but I might have to revisit for the big game, Michigan, Ohio State. We'll get there. A huge game out west, though. Stanford is going to Washington. Washington been a little bit inconsistent as well, but they control their own destiny with 2 more big games inside the Pac-12 North. Of course, they got Stanford coming to Seattle this week, and then they'll play in the Apple Cup against Washington State. They're a 9.5-point favorite. Unfortunately, the Huskies slipped up last week against Cal, but I think they could bounce back here. What do you feel like?
Yeah, I feel the same way. We've definitely had some tough losses, but adversity, it hits, and I feel like we're going to rise out of it, So I'm excited to see what they do. Coach Peterson, I'm sure he's putting a great game plan together. So, and it's always a good matchup versus Stanford. So it'll be a tough one because, they're a physical team always. They come with it. So, but I think we'll bounce back.
How's this rivalry? I mean, you played against Stanford 4 times. You played against David Shaw twice, the head coach. Is this a big one that you circle on the schedule every year?
Yeah, Stanford was always a big game. Like I said, they were a physical team. They got in them big personnels, ran the ball, and then took shots down the field as well too. But they test you. They test your manhood. They come right at you, So it was always a challenging physical game versus them.
Absolutely. Physical football, Stanford's known for it. Washington has played good this season, just a few unlucky bounces.
Well, offensively, though, I mean, Jake Browning got benched last game, has been very inconsistent this year. We talk about rookie-type mistakes, you don't see from a veteran quarterback, but he's making those things, I think, just trying to do too much. I think he understands that I don't have elite receivers on the outside. He's trying to create a little bit instead of just saying, hey, I got a great defense. We're going to be at home. Let's just run the football, take care of it, play field position, play the turnover game, and let's just get out of here with a W. And then you look at the other side, you talk about bad defense, though. Stanford right now, I think that 4 of their past 5 games have given up over like 38 points. So I think Washington at home, their defense is playing really, really well. Bryce Love for Stanford just has not gotten it going. I mean, this Stanford offense has not gone going in the run game pretty much this entire season. So Washington defense does well. And then Jake Browning just does enough to get Washington to get this victory.
I think Washington, they do. They have their backs up against the wall, and they still have attainable goals in front of them at home in Seattle. I like Washington this weekend as well. Last game on the slate. This one's going to determine who the champion of the SEC East is. It's for a berth in the SEC championship game. Number 6 Georgia traveling to number 11 Kentucky. chance UGA has a hangover after that Florida win?
No, I don't think a hangover necessarily. I think they're going to go out there and play really well. But we go back, I mean, it's the theme of the week since you're here, defense.
Yeah.
Defense. I mean, this Kentucky team's given up about 13 points a game.
But who have they played? I mean,
they're still playing their SEC ball. And,
Yeah.
and you talk about SEC football, you think defense, you think running the football. And they're only giving up just over 100 yards per game rushing it. So if they can keep Holyfield and Swift to, 3 yards per carry, under 120 yards, somewhere around there, make this a battle, make Fromm have to throw the ball 30 to 35 times. I think with that defensive line and Josh Allen, I think they can have success with the crowd noise as well. So I like Georgia because I think they're a better overall football team, but you got to love Kentucky. We talked about at the beginning. You got to love a football team that just finds ways to win football games. It starts defensively. We've seen big plays in the special teams. And then if Terry Wilson can be the quarterback we saw versus Florida, just a fun, energetic, make plays with his legs, looks like he's playing backyard football. If he's that kind of quarterback this week, I think that gives Georgia's defense a little bit more trouble as well. I think it'll be a good game, though. I think this is going to be a lot of energy, electric environment. Like he said, this is for the East.
Yeah.
This is to make it. And you want to talk about something crazy. Kentucky wins. LSU wins.
Yeah.
I like Kentucky's chance of being LSU over Alabama. If Kentucky beats LSU and Kentucky's in the Final Four, I mean, what do you know?
I would even think
Drew, you
that.
could run for mayor for Kentucky.
I would even think this. I mean, this is legitimate here. You
yeah,
might
think
call
about
me
it.
crazy. If Kentucky were to win the SEC championship and Alabama not get in, right? So you have an 11-1 Alabama team, an SEC champion Kentucky, an undefeated Clemson, an undefeated Notre Dame, right?
Yes.
I don't know if Kentucky would get in. I think Alabama would be put in before
No.
Kentucky. I honestly
No.
do. I honestly do, because Alabama is one of the best college football teams
Doesn't matter.
in history.
I would still put.
I'm just telling you
if,
right
if
now.
Alabama does not win the SEC championship game, I'm putting a one-loss Ohio State, Michigan, or Oklahoma, or Washington State over them.
I would be interested to see what the committee does.
If Alabama loses
I
this
agree
week,
with you.
who have they beaten this year?
They've beaten close to no one, but they've smacked everyone they've played.
I don't care. They strength of schedule is nowhere. They have to beat. Listen, we all know they're going to win out. I mean, this is just fun.
This is fun hypothetical talk.
Conversation right here. But we know they're going to win out. But still, if they lose to LSU, who have they beaten this year to say we know they're elite, but they haven't beat anyone?
You're totally right.
So,
I mean, this Georgia-Kentucky game, though, Desmond, it's going to be a test of mettle. Aaron said it's for the SEC East. It kind of reminds me like the Falcons. When you play the Panthers or when you play the Saints, you know what you're going to get. This game is defense and rushing attack. And for me, as objectively as I can say this, I'm just not buying Kentucky's rushing offense. Vanderbilt obviously let Benny Snell have a day, but he only had 60 yards against Texas A&M, 67 last week against Missouri. How do you get that bend, don't break mentality, especially when you know what you're going to be facing the next?
Yeah, well, like you said, these teams, they know each other. So, it's going to be one or two, it's going to be very few plays, I feel like that's going to determine the game, because I feel like these teams are going to know how they're going to get attacked. They're going to know the weaknesses of each other. And it's, like you said, it's for something, So it's going to be a close one. It's going to be a close one. But, I mean, I like Georgia. I'm just, I'm going for the hometown team, home state team. So
Absolutely. Josh Allen, I mean, we talk about him a lot because he is legitimately a beast, probably going to be an All-American at the end of this season. If he's Kentucky's X factor, I guess you could call him that. I mean, he is the factor.
Yeah.
Who's Georgia's X factor this game?
I think for Georgia, I think it's the running backs.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen Georgia versus LSU when they got it going, what they can do moving the football. It's Kentucky's defensive line versus Georgia's offensive line and Georgia's run game. I think that's where this game's going to be won for the University of Georgia.
Absolutely. Georgia is a 9.5-point favorite. Opened at 12, down to 9.5. I'll give you my pick first. Lay the points. Georgia is going to roll big. I just honestly think, and again, as objectively as possible, they're better on offense, they're better on defense, and they're better on special teams. If it comes down to special teams, Kentucky's kicker is 3 for 7 this year. He's kicking at a 43% clip. So I'll go with Rodrigo over Miles Butler. He is a Butler. I'm not related to him. But Georgia wins big. Desmond, what's your pick?
I like Georgia. I like them.
Aaron?
You got to go with Georgia right now. I just think overall they're better, but I think Kentucky can make this a fun game. It just means so much to them, and and their thoughts of getting to Atlanta.
Absolutely. Going to be an awesome game and really an awesome weekend. Thanks so much for Geico for presenting this episode of Campus Lore Live, and a huge thanks to the College Football Hall of Fame right here in Atlanta, Georgia. If you're in Atlanta, go to a Falcons game. Come here, though. Come to the College Football Hall of Fame. It is the epicenter of college football. It doesn't matter what team you're a fan of. They will make this experience exactly what you want. So a huge thanks to the College Football Hall of Fame, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks for watching Campus Lore Live.